Let's look at Ross chapter 22. Ross chapter 22 is all about infinitives. So in the last chapter, we talked about participles. And you remember my mantra is a participle is a verbal adjective. Participles are verbal adjectives. They can do anything an adjective can do, only better, because they're also verbs. In this chapter, we meet with a little critter called the infinitive. And specifically, there are two types of infinitives in Hebrew, the infinitive construct and the infinitive absolute. And in this chapter, we're dealing with the one that's called the infinitive absolute. The infinitive construct. So that's the chapter in Ross, chapter 22, the infinitive construct. Now, an infinitive is a verbal noun. And we can contrast that with the participle, which is a verbal adjective. Infinitives are verbal nouns, which means that they can do what a noun can do, only better, because they can also do things that verbs do as well. Now, in English, we have infinitives, and we typically render an infinitive with the form to plus then whatever the name of the verb is. So to eat is the infinitive form of eating, to eat. To drink, to be merry. Those are all infinitives. Think about the saying, to err is human. Okay? To err is an infinitive, and it is taking the position of the subject slot in that sentence. Something is human. What is human? The verb to err is human. All right? So we usually translate the infinitive in English, or render the infinitive in English as to blank. And when we meet an infinitive in Hebrew, an infinitive construct anyway, your temptation will be to give it the same sort of translation value that an English infinitive has, which is to plus whatever that verb means. But I want to encourage you to also think of the infinitive as having a sense sort of like this, the act of blanking where x equals whatever that verb is. So in our situation, if pakad is our paradigm verb, and we want to say, use the infinitive construct form of pakad, which is pakod, it would be the act of visiting, or the act of appointing, as well as to visit or to appoint. Okay? Now let's talk about how you form the infinitive construct, and then we'll talk about how you use it, or how Hebrew uses it. First of all, I want to look at the vowel pointing here. So let's take a look. The basic Cal infinitive construct formation, of course with pakad, I'm going to have my dagesh line here, but it's to put a vocal shava under root 1 and then a holum with root 2. Vocal shava under root 1, holum with root 2. So it's pakod, pakod. Vocal shava under root 1, holum with root 2. You could translate this as to visit, appoint, or what's another way to translate this? Yes, the act of visiting or appointing. Okay, great. Now, we do have a little bit of a problem here because the form pakod also looks like something else you've learned, doesn't it? What else have you met with that looks just like this? The imperative. The Cal imperative, second masculine singular, looks the same here. In fact, what I want to do, and you actually have this on your textbook, this would be on page 161. Let's just review the forms here. The Cal perfect, pakad, looks like this, pakad. The Cal imperfect is yif, what? Code. The Cal imperative is formed by chopping off the head, chopping off whatever the prefix is. So if I chop off the prefix, I'm left with the shava under root 1 and the holum with root 2. So that's pecode. And then it turns out that the infinitive construct, I'm telling you, has the same vowel pointing. Now, does this mean that all cal imperative to MS forms are identical to all cal infinitive construct forms? The answer is no. That's not necessarily the case. And let's take a look at another form. Let's take the word shema, to hear. Okay, the cal perfect of shema is shema. The cal imperfect of shema is yishma. You see that? Yishma. Where did that A-class vowel come from when normally I have a holum for my theme vowel in the cal imperfect? Why do I have a pathak under the mem here in yishma? It has to do with a gang running around wreaking havoc in the language. You see that guttural here? In is part of the guts gang. What kind of vowels do gutturals prefer? A-class vowels. So it causes the holum that would have been with the mem to become an A-class vowel, a pathak. So yishma, cal imperfect, he will hear. How do I create the imperative? I take the imperfect and I chop off, oops, that should have had a kirik there, yishma. I chop off the prefix, and what am I left with? Shema. Shema. All right? Still following the cal imperative pattern, removing the prefix. I'm left with shema from yishma. But what's the cal infinitive construct of shema? It's shemo with a holum. Okay? So even if in the imperative I would normally have a pathak here before that guttural, in the infinitive construct I am going to have the holum in all of them. Okay? And this ayin, by the way, is a strong guttural with a long vowel before it. So this is a situation where I get the furtive pathak at the end of the word here. So it's actually going to be shemoa. Shemoa. Okay? And to fill out our chart, we have the verb to choose, bahar, in the cal perfect, the imperfect, yiv, kar. This one has a pathak here. Why? Because chet is a guttural. Gutturals prefer A-class vowels. So the imperative to say choose what you want, what do? I chop off the prefix. I'm left with bahar, like that. And the infinitive construct, though, is going to be behor with a holum. So all infinitive construct forms get the holum theme vowel, no matter what they do in the cal imperfect and cal imperative. Okay? In that sense, the cal infinitive construct is going to be a lot easier to identify when you see it. Let me go back up here. I've mentioned here that the formation of the Hebrew cal infinitive construct is pecode. Vocal schwa under root 1, holum with root 2. But we do have a form of this that we will see with pronominal suffixes. And when that happens, here's what I want you to think of. Is that a shiva here under root 1? That is a shiva, right? And the holum, what vowel class is that? Is that A, I, or U class vowel? It's U class. Holum is a U class vowel. What's going to happen is when I want to add pronominal suffixes to my third root letter to say my act of appointing, his act of visiting, I can add pronominal suffixes to indicate whose action we're talking about. Then I'm going to see this vowel pattern. I'm going to see a kametz ketuf followed by a silent shiva. Now, what vowel class is kametz ketuf? Is it A, I, or U class? It's also U class. So basically, if you can think of it this way, this might help you. In the normal form, it's shava followed by U-class vowel. And when I want to add pronominal suffixes, I reverse the two. I have U-class vowel followed by shava. But what you have to remember is that the U-class vowel is the short U-class vowel, not the long one, because I'm in a situation here where this is going to be a closed, unaccented syllable, and it's going to have to follow my cuss rule. Closed, unaccented syllables require what kind of vowel? A short vowel. So I can't have a long holum here. I got to have a short kametz ketuf. And then my accent's going to be off to the left somewhere. Poke D, poke daha, poke dam, and so forth. Accent's going to be over here. So because of the closed syllable, my holum has to reduce to a short vowel, which is kametz ketuf. They're both going to sound the same. That is, they're both going to sound like O. P-code and poke d. Poke d. All right? So what I want to do is walk you through the forms of the infinitive construct with these pronominal suffixes attached. These are on your textbook, in your textbook, on your chart. And let's just walk through this, okay? So what I've got here is I've got the pronoun suffix labeled. So we're going to start with a 3MS pronoun. Here's the good news. You already know all these pronouns. They're the same pronouns that you've been using. We are going to use what I call the set 1 pronouns, or they're also known as the eHarmony pronouns. These are the ones that attach to singular nouns. If the infinitive construct is a verbal noun, then I can see how I can add a pronominal suffix to a verbal noun, because I can add a pronominal suffix to any noun, can't I? And I will translate it as his, her, your, my, and so forth, okay? So my normal infinitive construct form is pacode. But if I'm going to add a pronominal suffix, can I use the pacode pattern? Or do I have to switch it to the other form? I got to switch it to the other form where I reverse the two and I get a kametz ketuf here and I get a silent shava here. Okay? So it's going to be poke, and then I add my pronominal suffix, which in the 3MS is a holum vav. So it's poke do. Poke do. The act of visiting of who? Of him. The act of visiting of him. So that would be his act of visiting. So that's how I would want to translate this. This is why, by the way, I wanted to encourage you up here in my little exhortation to adopt this other way of translating the infinitive construct as frequently as you adopt the English way of translating or rendering an infinitive. The act of verbing, the act of whatever that verb means. Okay? Because if you try to translate the infinitive construct with the rendering to visit, and then you have this pronominal suffix added indicating who it is that's doing the visiting, it's not going to make good English sentence. You wouldn't say to he visit, or he to visit, or his to visit. None of that sounds like good English. Okay? Better English, his act of visiting. Or you could put act of in parentheses or just not say it, his visiting. But I just want to make it clear that visiting here is functioning as a noun, okay? His act of visiting or his visiting. Poke do. Poke do. What if I want to say, yes?
Do we have that handout?
You don't have it, but like I said, all this information is in your textbook on page 162 at the top. What I'm doing is I'm starting with nothing and showing you how the forms you have got here, okay? All right. What if I want to say her act of visiting? What do I want to add? I want to add a third feminine singular pronoun, but I have to add it to the form of the infinitive construct that takes the pronominal suffixes, which is again, the kametz ketuf and the silent shava, poke. And then I can add the kametz hey, and what is in the hey here? What is that dot called? Ma peak. Ma peak. So this is literally the active visiting of her. That is to say, her active visiting. She's the one who's doing the visiting here. Now, for the 2ms form pronoun, to say your active visiting, where I'm talking to a man or referring to a man, I'm going to add ka. You remember that pronoun, ka? So I could take my poke form. But now notice here that ka is a consonantal ending. And I need a vocal shava here to be able to pronounce this. I can't just say poke tcha, right? It's poke dcha, poke dcha. So I got a vocal shava here. Silent shava, vocal shava. So that's one way to write this. Your active visiting, poke dcha. I could also use the basic form pakod and add the ka ending, where this ends up creating a closed syllable, pakod, oops, gotta put that commence there, pakod cha, where I'd want a silent shava here, pakod cha, pakod cha. What's gonna happen? Where's my stress? The stress is on the end, which makes this closed and unaccented. I can't leave that holum there because it's long, and cuss syllables are closed unaccented syllables that require a short vowel. So I could get that with a kametz ketuf. Okay? So I could either see for your active visiting, referring to a man, poke daha, in the vein of poke do, poke da, poke daha, or I could go back to the original form, pakod, but I still have to do my vowel reduction on that closed unaccented syllable. Pakod ha. Pakod ha. Okay, so that's there are two ways to do that. Now, over here for your active visiting, where the you is a woman, I'm going to have poke, and then I'm going to use my 2fs ending, which is eich. Poke dech. Poke dech. Remember that silent shava there is 2fs, kametz with the final cough, 2ms. So, hey woman, your active visiting is wonderful. Poke dech. And then my active visiting is poke what? D. That's right, the good old Keurig yod for my. So this is my act of visiting, poke D. All right. Now let's take a look at the plural side. Oops, I needed to put P's here. Sorry about that. And one CP. Now, what's the third masculine plural pronominal suffix if I want to say their act of visiting and they are masculine plural? It's am. So I get poke, dam. Remember, Sus became Susam, their horse. Poke dam, their visiting, or their act of visiting. Poke dam. If it's feminine they, it's poke what? Da, with an N, right? Mem is masculine, nun is feminine. Poke dam, poke dan. Their act of visiting, and the they is female here. For the 2MP, I could retain the poke pattern. Poke, de, kem. Remember, I have kem and ken. Poke de chem. Or I could retain the Pacode pattern with the vocal shava first and add chem, silent shava, but remember the accent's over here on the end, so this has to be reduced to a short vowel because it's closed and unaccented. So it becomes Pacode chem, kamet ketuf, Pacode chem. So poke de chem, Pacode chem. This is your, and that's a plural you, masculine you, your act of visiting. To tell a group of women about your act of visiting, poke de hen. Poke de hen. All right? And then our act of visiting is poke what? De nu. Poke de nu. Sus, horse. Sus senu, our horse. Poke de nu, our visiting. All right. So those are the forms. All right, repeat after me. Poke do. So his visiting. Poke da. So her visiting. Poke decha. Or pekodcha. So this is a man, your act of visiting. Poke dech is your act of visiting, woman. And poke di is my act of visiting. Plural pronouns. Poke dam. Poke dan. So this is their act of visiting, male and female. Poke dechem. And down here, the alternate way of doing it, pekodchem is your or y'all's act of visiting, and it's a masculine y'all. Poke dechen is your or y'all's act of visiting, and that's a group of women. And then finally, poke denu is our act of visiting. When it comes to identifying the pronominal, the infinitive construct, like if you're reading Hebrew text, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute, probably the most common way to see the infinitive construct is going to be with a preposition lamed attached. All right? You will see the preposition lamed attached to the infinitive construct more frequently than you will in any other construction. After that, probably with a preposition bet and a pronominal suffix attached to it on the back side. So the preposition will go on the front of the infinitive and the pronominal suffix will go on the back. Okay? And we're going to see what the semantic value of all that is in just a moment. It isn't very normal to see the infinitive construct just hanging out by itself without a preposition attached to it. You do see it, but not as frequently.